Item 10A, receive quarterly financial report as of September 30th, 2009 for the 2009-2010 General Fund, Special Revenue Fund, Enterprise Funds, and Capital Improvement Program budget. And Mr. O'Leary.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, it has been the Council's policy on a quarterly basis to receive updates on the budget, and in particular the General Fund for the city. That the General Fund has been the fund of greatest concern over the last several years for the Council. Just might remind the Council, and probably don't need too much reminding of the difficult choices that the City Council needed to make in approving the current year's budget. Back in January of this year, the Council reviewed the financial condition and the budget similar to what we're doing here in the first quarter, and as a result of that, made adjustments to last year's budget and developed strategies looking at the current budget that was ultimately approved on June 23rd. The economic crisis that the country has been in, it's hard for me to think in terms that the impact really occurred or began occurring visibly in many sectors in September of 2008. Seems like it's been a much longer duration to me. And the crisis has had a number of impacts on revenues and on the budget here in San Bruno. Just a couple of the major impacts is that the assessed value has actually declined in San Bruno for all residential properties. Overall, there's been about a 2% decline in assessed value in 0809. The county has confirmed that. It's been years since there's been a decline of any size year to year. Assessed value is one area that you would anticipate increasing. Foreclosures are obviously higher today than they were 24 or probably even 12 months ago. So the impact is that property tax revenue has declined, and that was anticipated in this year's budget. A second area is taxable sales have dropped pretty significantly, and just have a couple of statistics to show you that the top 10 businesses in San Bruno are down 24% in sales since 2007. Our auto dealers are down 53%, and the department stores at Tan Fran are down 8% since 2007. That's not to say there are some individual businesses that are doing quite well and benefiting us, but again, to show the magnitude of the sales tax problem, just wanted to demonstrate that. Hotel tax revenue has been declining each month for the last 9 months. Prior to that, to put it into context, it actually went up 16 months in a row, to show you how the economic swing can be, and it obviously leads to the question, well, when did these 9 months of decline taper off and the trend reverse? The other budget impact of the crisis, and this is indirect to us, but as an impact of the impact on the state, is the state's plan to take about $1.9 million in tax increment monies from the city's redevelopment agency. That doesn't impact our general fund, but the redevelopment agency revenues and budget is a significant component of the city, and that is clearly impacting just the city's overall operations. Just wanted to point out again where the budget losses, revenue losses for the general fund are. Again, property tax is significant. Sales tax up in the range of about a little over $800,000. The hotel tax less of $51,000. So when you compare the 0809 budget to 910, there's about a $1.4 million reduction just in those three areas. I did want to point out that what we're showing here for 0809 was the original adopted budget. And again, as I indicated last year, we recognized that there were going to be budget reductions, and in all of the areas that are asterisked there in the 0809 budget, there was in fact budget amendments that actually changed the anticipated revenue even last year. And just wanted to point out significantly in departmental revenue, planning and building revenues, you see the reduction of about $1.5 million. The original, again, the 1.5 is the original budget. The amended budget last year was $1.1 million. So if you're just comparing the amended budget for last year to this year, the reduction is a great deal less. Just in looking at the general fund and some of the individual revenues, have described to the council how property tax, sales tax, and motor vehicle monies, which are significant revenue sources of ours, used to come primarily, aside from property tax, to us on a monthly basis and could be somewhat measured incrementally over the course of the year. Now, and the low percentages that are shown here for the first quarter for property tax, sales tax, and motor vehicle are all based on a majority of those funds come to us with our property tax. This is part of the triple flip arrangement that the state approved, changing the way we receive revenue. So majority of those revenues won't be received for the first half of the year. They won't actually be received until after the property tax payment is due December 10th. I did want to mention again the very low percentage on property tax. We anticipate at the end of the day the city will receive will receive our budgeted property tax, but there would remind the council that the state is borrowing $829,000 of our property tax this year. The city council recently took action to participate with the statewide effort where this taking by the state for property tax is actually a borrowing, and the city is, and the city council's given direction to sell the receivable through a bonding arrangement that will allow for the city to receive the $829,000 back this year and not have to wait for the 3-year period where the state would be making the annual or the repayment of what they're taking this year under the requirements of Proposition 1A.
If we can just go back to that slide, business taxes, you're at 71%. How far behind is that from where we consider would be? I mean, they're all due, so you should be much closer to 100%.
The business license or the business tax item includes the Sky Park also. So the business license themselves, you're correct that they're actually due July 1, but there are other things included in there that are spaced out, and I believe I think at this time last year we were at 72%, okay. So 71%. So yeah, I mean I would mention just the economic conditions that we're all aware of. I might mention that delinquencies in utilities, in business license, it is at a higher level than it has been typically, but one would sort of expect that with the economic environment. And
missing that the Sky Park was in there, that it pays quarterly. It's not as alarming as it was looking at it, thinking that it's everything that was due in July 1. So.
Right. Again, the departmental revenues are a significant portion of the budget, of the general fund budget, at nearly $5 million out of the $30 million that we anticipate. Again, generally looking at the revenue percentages compared to last year at the same time, they are very close and in line, and again would expect that the revenues from departmental activities are on target. Expenditures for the first quarter were exactly at 25%. They were exactly at 25% last year. It was 25% of a higher number last year. Our planned expenditures were about $33 million. At this time last year, they're about $31.5 million this year. So it's 25% of a smaller number. I just might mention there are a couple of department areas that are slightly higher, not greatly higher than the 25%. Engineering is one of those. They're showing at 33% this year. The reason for that is we budget our annual assessment to CCAG in the engineering department, and that is the reason that throws that to the higher percentage at 33%. And recreation also is one that tracks both last year and this year at a higher than 25%. And again, in part, that is the demand for part-time salaries in July and August for the summer programs that the department provides. So there's a little higher intensity of activity in the first quarter than over the winter and other quarters. Redevelopment, you can't see it from the slide, but from the staff report you can see that there are significant differences between the budget for both revenue and expenditures comparing last year to this year, and really that's a basis for an accounting change where we are now budgeting for all of the pass-throughs that are paid to the taxing agencies in San Bruno. Those are no longer being netted from the revenues. So if you look at the revenues, they're up. If you look at expenditures, they're up significantly, and that's really just an accounting change that we are implementing with this year's budget. The internal service funds and the enterprise accounts are all absolutely consistent with the percentages from the prior year. Again, would reinforce that we are on target for this year's budget. So I think really the bottom line is that a first quarter snapshot of the budget is a very preliminary look. It's difficult to say with certainty the implications of revenues and expenses in the first quarter. We have no data that would show at this point that we are anywhere except meeting the budget plan for both revenues and expenditures. I might mention just on the sales tax side, and again the percentage is shown a little bit low in the report. In addition to our own tracking of sales tax, we also retain a firm that primarily aids us in making sure that we actually collect all the sales tax that we are due in the course of a year. And they track our sales tax. They track all of their clients' sales tax over a longer period of time, and they're getting data from the state board that we tend not to be able to really analyze. They came out with their most recent data several weeks ago, and they would term our sales tax projection for this year, based on what they know today, they would term it optimistic. Their perhaps more likely estimate, based on the trend that they've seen, would be about a $100,000 reduction, but it's still within the realm. I mean, again, they would now say our projection is optimistic, but it's not. Again, at a variance that they would suggest any amendment to where we are. So I think the actual data that we have at this point indicates, again, that the budget's on target. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions the council
Questions from
has.
council?
Through the chair.
Councilmember Martina?
I have two questions. First one, I'll just take one at a time. Understanding that this is a snapshot, and so it's kind of hard to figure out the big picture in the end. What is your best judgment on where we will end up at the end of this budget cycle?
I would say, again, we have no reason on hard data to believe that it'll be any different than the budget as it was approved. I mean, one of the items, again, that we don't know is Measure F on the November ballot is an increase in the hotel tax from 10% to 12%. That is on the ballot in a number of cities here in San Mateo County. That the passage of that would generate probably about $100,000 the second half of this year. So that is an item, you know, depending on how that goes, or how the public responds to that, could dictate. But other than that, I would say that I believe that the revenues, at this point, I believe the revenues that we're anticipating we will receive, and that the expenditures, again, to adhere to the expenditure plan and the reduction in positions, as long as we adhere to that, we will continue to have a balanced budget by the end of the year.
Then looking forward into, since staff usually starts to begin work on the next budget cycle, the 2010-2011 in January, where do you see, or what indication do you foresee us being when we start embarking upon that? Where we'll be at revenues versus the expenditures, and how we'll be doing?
I would, you know, with the recognition that it's early this year, I think revenues next year, I mean, at this point in time, I see nothing in a trend that would indicate the prospects that we will have any greater revenue next year than we do this year. Now, there's some indication that we're right at the point where the recession is ending. You know, this is nationally. It is, because it's hard for me to believe that property tax, for instance, is going to change dramatically. So I don't know that the assessed values are going to come back quickly. I mean, I think the whole discussion of jobs and how jobs are going to fit into the economic recovery probably makes it a little problematic for us. I think the council's talked for a number of months that this is not a one-year problem that the city is really going to face as far as the revenue expenditure balance, and I'd say that's true for next year. I mean, I see I see nothing that would indicate that there is going to be anything dramatic revenue increase next year. I would say the pressure is going to be on to hold down expenditures in order to continue a balanced budget. I mean, there's a couple of areas next year and the following year. There is some built-in increase that will likely happen related to retirement costs for employees. We have been very fortunate the last 2 years. Health premium, the city's share of the health premium has really grown far less than we've seen other cities and in other regions. So that's been very positive for us. So I think there's going to be pressure for some expenditure increases going forward, and I don't see that there's going to be revenue to really match that. So I think it'll be a challenge. It'll be every bit as challenged for next year as this year.
And then the only thing is, after we have the second quarter figures, and I know that staff will come back, I really believe, in addition to just going over the PowerPoint presentation, I think potentially, depending on how that comes out, I think the council, with my recommendation, would be that we really sit down and analyze the budget, see where we perceive we're going to end up, to see if there's going to be a shortfall, if there's anything we need to look at. Obviously, November 3rd will have passed with the Measure F, as you indicated, and I think we need to take a hard look at where we truly are at 6 months into it, and with 6 months to go, and so that we can start planning ahead, since staff starts to work on it in January as well, but to make sure we can balance at the end of June 30th.
Any other comments or questions? Okay.